All right, we are going to move into 9.4, which is solving quadratics by factoring. So there are three methods of solving quadratic equations that you are going to learn about. Back in 9.2, you solved using just inverses. So you might have had something like 2x squared minus 4 equals 10. And you would just do the inverses. Since you had minus 4, you would add 4 to both sides. And then you had this timesing by 2, so you would divide by 2 on both sides. And then you had your squared, and the inverse of that is square rooting, so you would square root both sides. In 9.2, you used your saying of SADNEP in order to know what order to do your inverses in. Back in 9.2, you also learned that you should get 2 answers. Okay, so that is very important that you learned back in 9.2, and we will continue in 9.4. So at this point, this is going to be new information. So you do need to make sure you are taking notes. You're pausing the video as you need to. You're rewatching, rewinding, whatever you need to do to make sure you get all the notes copied down and written down. If you have a notebook, that would be helpful. Or if you just want to write it on a piece of paper and then put it in a folder, or if you took your binder home, you can put it in your binder. Just keep it somewhere where you're organized. You are going to need to continue to use these notes in future lessons, so keeping them somewhere where you know where they are will be helpful to you. Now, let's talk about very basic introduction. Something that is going to be used in this lesson is called the zero product property. The zero product property tells us that if we have two numbers that multiply to be 0, then at least one of those numbers is 0. So basically what that means, what that is telling you, is if I were to say I have A times B equals 0. Right now you have no idea what A is, and you have no idea what B is. Those are variables. But if together they need to multiply to be 0, then that must mean either A has to be 0, because 0 times anything will give you 0, or it'll mean B equals 0, because anything times 0 equals 0. So when you're solving your equation, you would be able to tell me that A equals 0 or B equals 0. Now you have no idea what the other number might be. If A equals 0, you don't know what B is. B could be 1,472. You don't know. But you know that A equals 0, and that works for your equation. Same thing here if you know what B equals 0. Well, in that case, you don't have any idea what A is, but you know that B equals 0 to give you this answer. So we're going to use that fact, because now instead of just telling you that I have A times B equals 0, I'm going to give you X plus 1 times X plus 3 is going to equal 0. So that means this entire left side, whatever X equals, must equal 0. In this case, I have two parts. I have X plus 1 times X plus 3. This is kind of like the A times B equals 0 portion, where A is this X plus 1 and B is the X plus 3, which tells you that either A equals 0, and A in this case is X plus 1 equals 0, or B equals 0, which B for us is X plus 3, must equal 0. And so this is what you're going to use to help you solve your equations, because now you have this very simple one-step equation. You can solve this for x to get your answer. I can subtract 1 from both sides. So x equals -1. Or over here, you can subtract your 3 to give you x equals -3. Remember how you're supposed to have two answers? 1, 2. Because if you plug in -1, -1 plus 1 is 0 for this set of parentheses. So you have 0 times some other number. -1 plus 3 is 2, but 0 times 2 is still 0. Doesn't matter what this is. If you were to plug in -3, well, -3 plus 1 gives you -2. But over here, -3 plus 3 gives you 0. So -2 times 0 gives you 0. So for this original equation, x plus 1 times x plus 3 equals 0, either x equals -1 or x equals -3. So to get your answers when they're set up like that already, where you have two things multiplied together, such as x minus 5 times x plus 3 equals 0. You take the first thing that's being multiplied, set it equal to 0, and then you take the second thing that's being multiplied and set it equal to 0. And then you are going to solve each equation. In this case, you would add 5. X equals 5 is your first answer. Or in this one, I would subtract 3. X equals -3 is your second answer. So for this equation, your answers are x equals 5 and x equals -3. Remember that when you're finding your answers here, you are finding the solution, which means you are finding the roots, you are finding the zeros, you are finding the x-intercepts. Okay. A couple others. I know you want to try and go do the IXL. I want you to stop and wait for 2 more examples real quick before you try them. There's 2 more small things, but 2 things I want you to see. Okay. So we still have our 2 things that are being multiplied. I have this set of parentheses times this set of parentheses, and it's set equal to 0. So I can still take the first set of parentheses, 2x plus 1 equals 0. Or I can take the second set of parentheses, 3x minus 5, and set it equal to 0. You're still going to solve. You just need to notice that this time there's more than one thing to do. I have 2x plus 1 equals 0, which means to solve, you need to subtract 1 from both sides. That leaves you with 2x. 1 minus 1 is gone. 0 minus 1 is -1. You're not done. You still have 2 in front of x. Remember, there's a times sign, so how do you get rid of it? You divide. Now, I don't know for sure what your IXL is wanting you to do, but I think it wants you to give it as fractions. So you should use Desmos to help you. Remember, you can go to Desmos and you can type this in as -1 divided by 2, and then hit your fraction button on Desmos. It will reduce it for you. In this case, it doesn't reduce. Your answer is x equals -1. Now you come over here and do the other one. You start by adding 5 because it says -5. You still have 3x. -5 plus 5 is gone. 0 plus 5 is 5. You have the 3 in front of your x, which means you need to divide by 3. Gets rid of those. And then you can type this into Desmos to reduce that fraction if it's possible. Once again, it is not possible, leaves you with your other answer. So your answers are either x equals -1/2 or x equals +5/3. Now there's one more I want you to see before you try the IXL. Okay. So we take our 2 things that are being multiplied and set them each equal to 0. When you look at this, you have 10x times 2x plus 4. Now, initially you might think, oh, I'm going to distribute. But no, that does not help you in this case. Remember in 9.2, we also talked about how you don't distribute. You are not going to distribute this. You take your two things that are being multiplied. You have 10x times 2x plus 4. So you should take 10x equals 0 or 2x plus 4 equals 0 and solve each of those over here. Very simple, dividing by 10, x equals 0. Or some of you already knew that x equals 0 just by looking at that information. And then you can solve your other one. You would subtract 4 first, gives you 2x equals negative 4. Then divide by 2, divide by 2. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. There are your two answers, either x equals 0 or x equals negative 2. Now, one thing I do want to also show you is how all of these is very, very simple of how you should be able to just look at it and find your answers. I had x minus 5. Now my answer is positive 5. I had x plus 3. Now my answer is negative 3. I had x plus 1. Now I have x is negative 1. Plus 3. Now it's negative 3. So if it's just some variable plus or minus some number, it's just the opposite. Now when you have these numbers here in front of your variable, look, it's the opposite of this divided by your number in front of x. So the opposite of this is positive 5 divided by 3. So positive 5 divided by 3. The opposite of this, your opposite of your constant, which is negative 4, divided by your coefficient of 2. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Okay, simple little tricks.